Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers and its monthly author showcase. I am your host, Peter Stockwell. Author A.C. Fuller is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. A.C. and I met at the Pacific Northwest Writers Association annual conference in SeaTac a few years ago. A recent Kitsap resident, A.C. writes intriguing stories and teaches about writing for authors who are just beginning. Welcome to our broadcast for Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers, A.C.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Your career has had a few bumps. What have you done to become this Amazon best-selling author?
Well, mostly just writing a lot, but the bumps you're referring to, I think, are the biggest bump was my first publisher going out of business. I published my first book with them in July of 2015. And they went out of business about a year later, right before my second book was about to come out, The Inverted Pyramid. So after that, I wrote for a while. I wrote more. I kept writing. I kept submitting to agents and talking to publishers. A few small publishers offered to republish my work. And then I decided to self-publish because neither of the publishers who offered me contracts seemed like they were worth working with. So that was really the only bump. From there, it's gone pretty well. My books have had moderate success. I have a long way to go still to get to where I want to go, but
Aren't we all that way?
yeah, and in terms of becoming an Amazon best-selling author, it's not quite as hard as it sounds. Depends on which genre you're in and what category, but my books have done pretty well for how little time I've been at it. In terms of the publishing side, I've been writing a lot longer.
Well, speaking about your first book, The Anonymous Source, it has become a #1 Amazon bestseller. It's not an easy thing to become a top recognized author. How did you get to be so well received?
Well, I worked really hard to launch the book. That was the first thing. I didn't just kind of write it and then decide I'll put it out. So I had a publisher. I worked with a lot of better known authors to get blurbs. I was very lucky that a few well-known authors offered to blurb my book, which is the little thing you see that says, you know, so and so is such and compares the book to this or that. So that was really lucky for me. Then I studied marketing quite a bit. Book marketing is a totally different thing than it was just a few years ago and very different than it was, say, 10 years ago. So, and in this case, we did a big promotion discount on the book and lots of people bought it. And it rose up the charts very quickly. Unfortunately, it dropped fairly slowly, but that's what always happens. And a lot of people just bought it. I don't exactly know what happened, but the promotion just hit at the right time, I think, and
Very good.
took off from there.
Well, your education background has helped you prepare to become a successful writing person. But you had other employment, which came from that.
Yeah.
Can you explain if any of this helped you with your writing? I mean, I know it did, but explain to our audience.
Yes, so I felt fairly young that I wanted to write, and when I was in my early 20s, I started writing pretty seriously. I didn't have the stamina, the perseverance to really get serious with writing, so I was kind of on again, off again. So I ended up doing some journalism, going to journalism school, training in that form of writing. That was back in New York City. And then I was hired to teach at NYU journalism school, so I was teaching that particular form of writing, kind of essays and news articles and things like that. And from there, I did that for a while. I worked as a chef for a while before that, and when I was about 31, 32, I decided I really wanted to get serious writing fiction. I had more experience under my belt at that point, and I'd had more writing experience, more life experience, and at that point I just decided I'm going to do this no matter what, and The Anonymous Source came out of that. So I think getting serious fairly young helped, but it still took another 10 years of starts and stops and failures and, you know, learning to get even just my first book published.
Well, most authors I know that I have met are driven to become an entity in the literary world. What are your goals as an author?
My first goal is to make a full-time living writing books, which is fairly hard to do. it's fairly easy to publish a book these days. Everyone knows, who's heard of self-publishing knows, we could write a book right now, upload it to Amazon, and we could all have a book out. So my first goal is to be making a full-time living at this. That's my wife's first goal for me too. She is super supportive, which is really lucky. But I have to work part-time now. So my first goal, make a full-time living at this, where I'm putting out multiple books a year and paying the bills just writing fiction, which would be a huge start for me. I'm getting closer to that, but not there yet. From there, it's just continue to grow, write faster, write better books, publish more books. Eventually, possibly partner with a publisher would be useful. Right now I'm independently publishing, which I love, but at some point I'd like to partner with the right publisher who could get my books out to a wider audience. Although Amazon is the widest audience there is, but
pretty big audience.
But there's other audiences that you can't really hit with Amazon these days. So that would be a secondary goal. But right now I'm putting everything toward getting as many books out as I can that appeal to a wide readership, so that I can be making a living at this, which would be really that's the ultimate dream, is just to be making a living writing novels is about as good as it gets from my perspective.
I think that's quite true. Fortunately for me, I already had a career and I retired, and so I have an income that's coming in. I'm not starving to death yet.
Right.
However, my books, although we break even, we're not living on them. So
right, and
I do appreciate your goal.
Yeah.
And someday as well, I would like to get that goal myself. In a general sense, do you think writing has been a help to you?
It's a double-edged sword. It's been a great help to me. There's probably about a third of the days where I wish I was doing something more like a 9-to-5 type job, like being a regional manager at Wendy's or something. Just to have something that isn't something I could go home from. With writing, when I'm really into writing a book, it kind of consumes me.
It's hard to go home when you're already there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I go out to libraries and Starbucks just to get a different location. But it's more the mental aspect of it. It consumes me. It's like having homework all the time. I'm always wanting to work on the book. I'm always wanting to think about it, research it. So I don't clock out. So sometimes I wish I wasn't doing that. But overall, I would say it's been the greatest thing for me, because there's so many positives, you can't name them all. But
well, it sounds to me like you're the same thing I have. I've met many authors that are driven by this idea of becoming an entity, and it's enhanced my life to think that I can do that as well. And so that's why I keep writing. It kind of compels me to want to satisfy my readers, because they're always asking, where's the next book? When's it coming out? So is there a compunction in you to satisfy these readers who are picking up your books?
Yeah, I would say it's about 50%. I feel compelled to satisfy them, especially now that I have two of my books here. The third one, The Mockingbird Drive, just came out, so I don't even have a paperback of it yet. They're literally in the mail. So, and now everyone who's catching on to this series wants the next one as soon as possible. And so the task for me is, how fast can I write something that's good? And of course, that's why I say it's like having homework all the time. So there is that compulsion to satisfy the readers. There's also another piece of it, which is to satisfy my own interests. I do a lot of research. I'm really interested in the media and in politics. So that drives me, and then finding ways to turn that interest into a compelling story that moves rapidly. So it all drives me, and the craft of getting better drives me too. And like I mentioned before, the idea of making a living doing this, that drives me for sure. Because I'm not retired from another career or something. I'm all in with this.
Yeah. You are going to Pacific Northwest Writers Conference this summer?
I am. I'm going to be teaching a class on podcasting there, actually.
Which is why I wanted to ask you that, because I know you do have a podcast.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So it's called the Writer 2.0 podcast. I started it a couple years ago, mostly because I learned fairly early on that I wanted to, I went to the PNWA Writers Conference, and it was a phenomenal experience. I met you at my first one, Bob Dugoni, who's a great thriller author and mystery author, and a ton of other authors. And I wanted to continue that experience as much as possible. And so I thought, well, if I start a podcast, I can kind of create a writing conference in a podcast form, where every week I'll do a 1-hour interview with either a well-known author or a librarian or a bookstore owner or a literary agent or a publisher or an editor, just to get a wide-ranging view of what the publishing industry is actually like now. And so I've just learned so much doing it. I interview traditionally published, old school authors like Lawrence Block, or self-published authors just starting out in the romance genre, all kinds of different people. And I've been exposed through that to a lot of independent writers who are making really good livings self-publishing books. And so learning their techniques, both from a writing standpoint and a marketing standpoint, is what eventually compelled me to go independent myself rather than signing with a small publisher. So really that's what it is, and it's, right now I've taken a short break from it, but it's going to be coming back, and it's just a great experience.
Very good. Well, I have my own publishing company, Westridge Art, so I get to do all the work. And you said you're self-published as well after your experiences with a company we will not mention, which decided to not stay in business.
Right.
So what do you do to get your books published, to get your cover designs, to get the interior formatting done, to get, we know all about ISBNs and all that, but how do you get these things done?
I hire professionals for the covers, for the editing and proofreading. For the layout, I actually do that myself. I've learned the techniques so that I can do that on my own. Mostly it's just write, get it as good as I can, then get a professional for the editing and the proofreading and the cover.
Very
and
good.
The layout, actually, there's great programs now that have made that very simple, so I
Who
can
does
do
your
that.
printing?
That's through Amazon CreateSpace, so
Okay.
I do it all through Amazon right now.
Are you satisfied with them?
I'm not thrilled with them. I would say the product is good. It's not amazing. Long term, I might go in a different direction.
Now, when you post your books, one of the problems I had with my first book, which went through CreateSpace, was that when Ingram found it, it became a print on demand,
Right.
non-returnable.
Right.
Do you have that same issue?
Yes. Yeah. Except for me, the non-returnable isn't as big a deal because I'm so focused on ebooks. Because 99.5% of the income and the sales that I have is through ebooks. That I don't. The paperbacks are important, but they're not as big a part of my strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, marketing. You said you took some classes in marketing and studied marketing. What are your secrets?
So it turns out that the number one way to market a book is to write another book these days, if you're mostly selling through Amazon. If most of your sales are ebooks through Amazon, the people who are doing the best that I know, and I try to know most of the ones who are doing really well, is they're marketing their books based on selling other books and the way that that helps them with the Amazon algorithms. There's people doing well doing all sorts of different techniques, but the Amazon algorithms they give preference to people who are publishing more books, and the more you publish, the higher you're going to show up in search and things like that. So that's one thing that helps. There's a few promotion companies like BookBub and a few others that are super helpful because they have massive readership among ebook readers. So getting hooked up with them really helps. I've found a lot of readers that way. Building a mailing list by giving away something for free, like a novella or a short story, is a really effective way to get readers, especially if the novella or short story is connected to what you're writing. So people who go to my website, for example, can sign up for my reader club and they get a chunk of one of my books for free, or depending on the week they happen to be there, possibly a whole book for free. Then they're on my mailing list. And if they don't like my books, they can unsubscribe and move on. If they do like them, then sometimes they move on and decide to buy the rest of the books. So those are a few of the techniques. But I found so far that the more books I put out, the better the marketing goes. When I had just one book out, it was a lot harder.
It is. It's very hard. I was over in Bainbridge Island on Saturday speaking with, Robert Degoni was one of them, 4 authors that were over there. And when you take a look at the list of books they have, they're up in the 15 to 20 range of books that they have put out. And yes, it takes a while to get that name recognition to the point where an author's name is more important than the actual book, because they trust the author to write the book they want to read.
Right. As a reader, that's the way I am. At first, I really care what the story is about. I might look at the first few pages and see how the writing is. After I've read a book or two, I just kind of know this is someone who I'll trust with my reading time, and I just buy their books without even, like if Bob Dugoni puts out another book, I'm just going to get it.
Comes out in September.
Yeah, I'm not even going to pay attention to what it's about because I just know I've trusted it will be good. And I know it will be in a certain ballpark of what he does. So, and I'm not there yet. That's where I'm aiming to get long term, though.
Me as well.
Yes. All of us
Last year,
probably.
I worked a few major events. I was at the Blackberry Festival down in downtown Bremerton. I worked the Kitsap County Fair, Bremerton Farmers Market, and they were good for me. Do you have any events that you have coming up in the next few months that people can go meet you?
Let's see. Well, the PNWA conference, that's really geared toward writers. Readers, too. Some readers go, but mostly for aspiring writers. So that's one. I'll be at that in July. This August, I'll be teaching 2 writing workshops in Paulsbo. Those are day-long workshops, which people can find out about on my website, acfuller.com. What else? I think I'm actually doing a book signing in July in Bainbridge Island, on Bainbridge Island at the bookstore there.
At Eagle Harbor?
Yeah, but I don't have the details of that worked out yet. But I'll be there sometime in July.
Well, we'll make sure the details get put onto our show so that people can know.
That'd be great. And a lot of the stuff I do these days is online. I found it's because I have a wife and 2 kids who I'm driving around a lot. It's easier for me and overall more productive to focus on online events and things like that. So I'm focusing there most of the time.
Very good. Well, if a book club or other organization wanted to invite you to speak, you already gave us your webpage, and we've posted that. How else can we contact you?
The best way is by email, ac@acfuller.com, fairly easy. Speaking of book clubs, actually I'm going to be speaking at the Hansville Book Club sometime in August too. I'm so bad at these things. My head is so in the next book that if I don't have these things written down in 8 places, I just won't show up. But I will show up. So I just forget them until I look at my calendar. So ac@acfuller.com is the best way to reach me, or contact me through my email. I have a Facebook author page where I share all sorts of cool stuff about the books, facebook.com/acfullerauthor.
Very good. Well, we've talked a lot about many things. Is there anything else that you'd like to pass on to our BCAT reader or audience about how you work through this craft and this art of writing? Anything we haven't talked about?
Well, mostly I'd say that the number one thing for people out there who are looking to become writers or are already writers, the number one thing I've learned is just, which is pretty cliche at this point, is reading a lot and writing a lot are the 2 best things. I would also say that studying different ways people have found success is very important, because the more writers I meet, the more I learn that there's not really one way to do it. The most successful self-published author I know, who is making now 7 figures as a totally self-published author, doesn't have an editor. His first books he put out without getting them proofread. They were, in his own words, a mess. The stories were so compelling, though, his readers didn't care.
They got through the mess.
They did write to him saying, you really need an editor and a proofreader, this is garbage. But we're going to read it anyway because the stories are so compelling, the characters, the emotions are so compelling, we love it. I've learned a lot from him. He's only been writing 2 years and he's making 7 figures now self-publishing. And he writes incredibly fast. He puts out a ton of books. And it works for him because his stories work for the readers. I also know people who take one book and craft it over 5 years. So there isn't one way. I would say study different people, find someone who you want to aspire to be like and model your career after them, because there isn't really one piece of advice that works for everyone in this business, is what I've found.
Well, and that's good advice to anybody who is out there who wants to be an author, that it is your life, it is your voice, it's your way of doing things. And making that story as compelling as possible is the secret. That it will drive people to the point where they say, I'm mad at you. Well, why are you mad at me? What did I do? It's just, I could not put your book down last night. I didn't get a shower. I didn't get any sleep. And, and that's what we look for.
Yeah, and so I definitely don't recommend that people publish stuff without an editor or a proofreader, but the amazing thing is that it does work for some people because the characters are compelling enough. and the story is compelling enough. I wouldn't personally do that, but what I've learned is there's just no right way to do it. And story, in most cases, I think trumps everything. Readers will forgive a lot except a dull story, and then they won't need to forgive it. They'll just put it down and never think about you again if the story is dull.
That's the killer for another series.
Exactly. It's not people hating you. It's people not reading far enough to even have an opinion because they're bored. So yeah, it's a strange business, and because of the way self-publishing is now, that you can upload a book and make changes to it on the fly, it's just a different world out there, and it's strange that some of the most successful writers I know are breaking all the rules because they're pleasing readers.
And some publishers are not happy with that.
No, some publishers are not happy with that at all, and they're trying to adjust. And I study the publishing industry a lot, and a lot of the traditional publishers are adapting. They're trying to adapt now because they're losing so much market share, and co-opting many of the techniques that have been developed by independent writers in terms of marketing.
It was interesting. I have attended the International Thriller Writers Thriller Fest in New York.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And I did that about 5 years in a row. I haven't been for 2 years now. But during that time period, we had major speakers coming in, presidents and vice presidents of the major publishing companies coming in, and their story, year to year, kept changing about, well, that e-market, nothing's going to come from that. Well, that's got a little bit to the point where they now are running their own e-book publication companies.
And they're scouring the bestseller lists, trying to pick up independent, self-published authors who are already building massive audiences and offering them traditional publishing deals, or in some cases print-only distribution deals, and all sorts of crazy things are happening.
So things are different. They are great. We're having fun.
Yes, it's a great time to be a writer. And I also have friends who are traditionally published all the way who are also doing pretty well. So there's no right way to do it, I don't think. There's a lot of different paths.
Well, AC, thank you for coming and sharing all that you do in this literary world. It's been fun to talk with you and to get to know you. I look forward to continuing endeavors in conjunction with you and the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers. You've hosted classes. Maybe we can get you to host here in the future. We'll see.
I'd love to, sure.
We'll see.
Or come to a class.
Yeah.
Always got to learn more.
There's always more we can learn.
Yeah.
I would like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in to the Kitsap Bremerton Access television station and viewing this Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers production. And I wish to thank the BCAT staff on the cameras and in the director's chair. Our broadcasts are scheduled for Saturday evenings at 6 p.m. on Wave Cable Channel 3 and Comcast Channel 12. Keep in touch with our Facebook and web pages to discover where you can meet local authors and artists. I hope everyone has a pleasant evening and a productive and fascinating week. Until next week, I am Peter Stockwell with Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers in conjunction with the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television. Good night.
Welcome to the Writer 2.0 podcast with AC Fuller.
I'm joined now by three-time podcast guest Emma Scott, whose new book, The Butterfly Project, is a romance about regret and forgiveness, and from what I can tell, it's already tearing it up in its first few weeks out in the market. Trish from Unbound Book Reviews said, "I will say that my world has been tipped on its axis by possibly the most powerful, thought-provoking story I've ever read. The Butterfly Project is available on Amazon. It's exclusive there for now." Emma is also a marathon runner and a caffeine addict. She lives in California with two smart, feisty daughters and a super supportive husband. Welcome back to the show, Emma.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me again.
Did I get everything right in your bio?
I'm going to have to admit that the marathon running part might not be as applicable as it once was.
You were well, you can say you're a marathon runner if you've ever run a marathon, I'd say. So you haven't run one lately.
I haven't run. Yes, that would be more accurate.
Which one did you run when you did run, or which couple did you run?
I did the San Francisco half marathon maybe even 3 years ago. And I did a bunch of smaller ones since then, like small 5Ks and such. But that was the only real big marathon one, and I probably need to come clean on my bio about that.
Okay, well, that's we can still count it. Yeah, I ran the Portland Marathon 5 years ago, and now could not run a marathon without many months of intense training because I'm way out of shape.
Me too. Totally back.
Yeah, I've heard the San Francisco Marathon is a tough one. Lots of hills.
Yeah, there's some parts that are a little challenging, but I think 13 or 26 miles, no matter where you are, is probably